In a few months, I could be eating my words.
Let's find out what's for dinner.
Who are you? First line of the show, and what a fantastic first line in terms of themes of a show about identity and what defines a person. First shot is a bird's eye view of Helly's body positioned unnaturally on a long table resembling a coffin with 12 chairs surrounding, speaking to a small speaker positioned just out of her reach. I mean, that is just fantastic. There is so much mystery already starting within these first moments. From the speaker, we hear a voice presenting this false sense of familiarity with this customer service tone we all know too well, that a representative will be with you soon voice, that let me just verify some things with you first voice. Slightly belittling but heavily scripted and has this unmistakable odor of the workday and corporate world. Presenting this voice that immediately brings about this aggravating sense of memory in this uncanny boardroom already sets a mood that kind of careers the entire episode. The questions presented are basically the security questions you need to answer to gain access to your own data in most business endeavors. We see Helly unable to answer most of these questions. She is literally unable to gain access to her own life or being denied access to her own life. It honestly feels like that questionnaire is meant to do exactly what it does, gives the innies a sense of removal from themselves, a sense of hopelessness, and at the moment of complete breakdown, the voice presents itself and rewards the innie for their inability to connect. It's brutal. It's terrifying. It raises so many questions. The start of Severance is solid gold, #1 Duke of New York good. So after seeing this odd little scene, we are kind of curious just how self-contained this world is, and the show immediately shows us this. We see Mr. Scout, as he's referred to during this section, crying in his car and gets out to reveal a full parking lot. We wonder how many other employees do just this same routine. We make our way in to see a building full of hurried business people and understand that this is far from an isolated world. This looks like an entire corporation dedicated to these ideals. Mr. Scout moves through a series of checkpoints, entrance to the main building, a call to confirm his entrance, another key-carded door, a locker. It is a process to get into this place. Mr. Scout switches out parts of himself to be replaced by different parts. Greeted as Mr. Scout by the security officer, Mr. Scout descends an elevator. When you call an episode Good News About Hell and feature Mr. Scout descending down a staircase and elevator, we set up a very specific tone and feel about this environment. Upon descending, we meet Mark S., the same corporate world we are presented in the beginning, but more fleshed out. Again, familiar but different, an odd 70s aesthetic, but mixed with this blinding white endless hallways akin to a stereotypical maze, set up for rats in an experiment. Mark navigates these halls flawlessly, no faltering or second guessing. We understand Mark understands this place and looks to be at ease and comfortable in it. Most of what I'm discussing here isn't done through dialogue, but rather visuals and performances that convey this message, which is lovely in a visual medium like television just saying. We meet Mark's co-workers, Dylan and Irving, and some light comic banter. It's another fantastic time for this. It allows us to relax a little bit and get comfortable in a world that has been made to look very tense. Again, most of this dialogue isn't so much backstory as it is understanding these characters' outlooks on life, which helps us bond and get to know their personality traits. We meet Milkshake and we see the tone change entirely. And God, are we all in agreement on just how good Milkshake is in this show? I think the minute he got on screen, he was just fascinating. And honestly, it's just basically entirely the actor's performance. He is just this weird friendly shark. He is presented as both friendly and direct. It's so unsettling. He is so fantastic. We meet Harmony, and again, class act performance, tonally cold but also fiery, solid gold as always. Mark is promoted and given the offer of a handshake available on request. Mark asks for one, and Cobell is slightly taken aback by this. I'm not sure if that's a throwaway joke or not, but in the back of my head, it's some sort of indicator of Mark to Cobell. Like this is some sort of Chekhov's handshake that will present itself in later seasons. Either way, it's a nice little touch to let us know that Mark and Cobell's outlook on the workplace. We understand our in media res opening now presented from the other direction. I would argue man in the curtain style. We are now presented that Oz, the great and powerful, is just some guy doing his job. Another cog in the machine, unaware of the larger picture at play, which is lovely set up for a world, as well as a lovely critique of corporate accountability. Really, no one is at the top. Everyone is just following orders, so there really isn't anyone to blame or reward. It's terrifying and isolating, and I love it. Helly does this great fourth wall breaking question about being livestock once Mark enters the room. It's this nice little tip to fan theory culture, right? The writers can already feel you concocting these outlandish theories, so we're just going to go ahead and negate one of them right outside the gate. I would also say the amount that Mark chastises her for such an outlandish idea lets us know where the writers are at, with how they want us to approach our theories. I mean, this show has elements of sci-fi, but sci-fi with a capital S and F probably isn't the direction they are going. Helly asks to leave, and Mark leads her out through the labyrinth. We pass by unused rooms that Mark explains are being set up for new endeavors. So we always have this kind of idea of expansion in the corporate world, whether it's actually being conceived or fed to employees to find a sense of moral and corporate allegiance. As Helly is leaving, I just love this little touch of a green sign above the stairwell and a red fire extinguisher positioned at the end of the hallway. I mean, the people who made this actually cared about what they were putting on the screen. Cobell's story about hell reinforces this low sci-fi concept. They are not literally in hell, but symbols and signifiers which line up with our concepts of hell. One of our clearest concepts of hell presented through Christianity is the sense of separation from God, which fits nicely within the construct of severance and separation as well. Helly has presented her outie story, and we return to this idea of othering from oneself and what constitutes true ownership over one's faculties. Mark and Helly's conversation here is maybe my favorite dialogue of the entire season.
Do I have a family?
You'll never know.
I have no choice.
Well, every time you find yourself here, it's because you chose to come back.
Mark treats the newborn Helly with wry dismissal that grows into the very idea that Cobell discusses. We are not only creating the hell we choose to be a part of, but are actively choosing to go there. It's a lovely statement on workday life and life itself by the troubles we choose to engage in. At the halfway point through the episode, we leave the world of Lumon and get to know about our other POV character, Mark Scout. Mark's life is presented plainly and static, with key defining differences being how dimly Mark's world is lit. Lumon's derivation, being that of lux from the Latin for light, shows Mark's outside world of Lumon mostly in shadows and darkness. Mark is brought by his sister to a dinner without dinner outing, drawing a nice connection line to the absurdity of the workday world with the absurdity of social interactions and gatherings. Names are also presented in the first episode of this show in an interesting way of self-identifying. Mark Scout is Mark S. and The Office, and so on, so your sense of self being identified is what your name is. When Mark greets his sister's husband, he identifies him as Rick, which the husband restates as Ricken, this being his name he chooses to be identified as, still overseeing the overwhelming sense of identity politics presented in Lumon expressed in the outside world. The table not understanding that World War I was called such is also an interesting note. I mean, this is a fairly basic, if nothing else, obvious detail that seems to impress the table. I immediately got into my head this idea of information management from 1984, right? Like we've always been at war with East Asia kind of thing. I also love that no one at the table really knows what Lumon does, and it's a nice nod to the idea of trusting and not questioning big business. Or Big Brother. Got him! Wait, Ricken made the pajamas Mark is wearing on a loom? Ricken equals Jacob. Confirmed. That's done. It's done. It's confirmed. Petey presented on the outside through a bright light that hits him from the darkness also lovingly plays into the dark and light aspects of the show. The light of Lumon flashing into the outside darkness of Mark's life. Petey's introduction is a nice flying the ointment to the world at the end of the episode. Just the right amount of world building and a bit of comic relief, mixed in with this nice little button with the address on the back of the card to lead us into the next episode. Mrs. Solvig reveal, I think everyone knew within the first few words of dialogue. But like I've said before, just because we know a mystery's answer doesn't mean it's bad. It's kind of lovely to be right. And it's also a fantastic ending because it does something very important in these last moments. With the reveal of Mrs. Solvig as Cobell, we now expand out our mysteries. What is she in the outside world? Is this her outie? Does she have an innie? What does she know? It's exciting. It's a fantastic episode, and it gets my yes, thank you award for greatness. Episode 2 starts with a confirmation that Helly did indeed make this choice of what looks like her own free will, since the resourceful viewer might be questioning that concept. Milkshake drops the Egan breakfast answer, showing us yet again that this friendly disposition is being used for other purposes. The operation scene is brutal and removed, intimate and clinical, another fantastic scene to both remove and endear us to this world. Can I just say the way they shoot these Helly leaving scenes are all so unique and interesting? It's such a great way to present this information using varied camera tricks and techniques, which again is very impressive. Workday continues, learning more about the hierarchy within the Severance team. Helly as our fish out of water, Dylan as a corporate go-getter, Irving as a devotee company man, and Mark as our character in flux. Also, these old school computers and design layouts scream Dharma Initiative to me as we yet again start questioning and investigating the numbers. Milkshake leads us in these team building exercise. Almost all people who have had corporate jobs are familiar with this concept, with the melon party being a great parallel that workplace nominal rewards of sheet cake or sandwich selection with 3 pizza varieties for workplace bonding. Milkshake also uses this scene to dig deeper into the real world effects of a severance program. The innies have no experience of death because of their disconnect from the outside world. Starting a slight tone of Adam and Eve in the Garden of Creation theme, they are unaware of death and newborn in this world of innies. Helly attempts to escape, and we are shown that this is a self-enforced prison as well as an outside source of imprisonment with Grainer, a manifestation of Cerberus as the guard dog of the Lumon hellscape. Mark is presented on a date in the outside world. We see him order more than one drink, which is alluded to in the earlier episode, Mark using alcohol to numb and forget the pain of the loss of his wife. Mark alludes to an aggressive nature, explaining to Helly when he was first severed, and we see that boil up during a confrontation with Severance detractors. Miss Selvig comes over to investigate Mark, and the performance is really lovely and cryptic, maybe checking in, maybe flirty, maybe authoritarian, all ending with her referring to blueprints within her purse, which may or may not be connected to the maps that are later featured in the show. She doesn't present them, so this bit of information remains an unanswered question. I love this little line that Dylan explains that the erasers are decorative since they don't have pencils. It's such an interesting idea of reward being given that has no intrinsic value, but only the display of value in the world of Lumon. We see the beginnings of Irving's delusions of dripping black liquid. Wait, dripping black liquid? Irving equals Bojack. It's confirmed. Mark skips work and meets up with Petey, who begins the process of explaining the Lumon world. We expound on the break room, this entirely Orwellian place, again labeled as a place to take a break, instead is inverted as a sort of torture room. Bert and Irving meet, and we are all in agreement they are entirely adorable and lovely together. We see the expression of biblical art done to showcase and demonstrate the ideal worship that Lumon has for Cure Egan. Irving's trip to the wellness room is a fascinating portrayal of the hierarchy prescribed to the innies. Irving is given this list of descriptors of his Audi, and he receives it with a sense of nourishment. It appears the innie has a sense of duty and obligation to work hard to support and enable their outside counterpart. Irving receives these fairly banal designations of his innie with a sense of pride and an odd sense of accomplishment. It's a fantastic expression of self-perception and value through perceived worth from the outside observation, even in the case where the perceived value is an identity of yourself you are unable to access. It's one of the best scenes in the whole show. The episode ends with the idea of perception and seeing Helly's eyes adjust to seeing the scary numbers as Petey's vision cannot disconnect from his innie life. We start off with Petey's flashes back and forth. Petey is more of a device than a character in this show, and that's not a bad thing. That's just how I feel like he's being used most effectively. He is used to get Audi Mark to question his world, as well as giving us trippy visual associated with the unsevering process. I do love that Mark keeps Petey in his basement. It's the same place he keeps most of the things he is unable to and chooses not to deal with, including that ping pong table he's got down there. Which is cool that Mark likes ping pong. Or better said, Mark used to like ping pong. Season 2 better cover his falling out with ping pong. Mark receives a red envelope from Petey, while he receives a green envelope for the new photos, which is a nice little green means go, red means stop in Lumon's programming. Ricken's book is dropped off and intercepted by Cope Bell. Helly begins the process of attempting her grand escape, which begins our journey to the Perpetuity Wing. On the way to the Perpetuity Wing, we learn that no one is quite sure how many departments there are, and that the departments are kept far apart as a protection from the department coup, whose origins and authenticity are questioned in the show. In terms of keeping departments away from each other, scared of each other, and unsure of each other, it feels as well that the show might be alluding to the unionization of workers as a perceived path towards freedom, perhaps in later seasons. Helly perceives a blood-soaked altercation with other departments that is strangely prescient towards the artist's rendering of the event from Bert. Upon arriving at the Perpetuity Wing, Helly clocks the current CEO's James Egan statue a little bit too long. Wink, wink, Harry. We learn about the 4 tempers of Kier. A scale is depicted assuming weighing these tempers, something akin to ancient Egyptian texts on weighing one's heart against a feathering judgment for the afterlife. Irving explains that Egan has been helping people, as he puts it, since 1866. Maybe it's all the time I spent with Don't Hug Me, I'm Scared lore, but I thought I'd do a quick search on 1866 significant events. I think the most provocative one I found was Alfred Nobel invented dynamite, a man who made this unstable explosive of nitroglycerin safer to handle. Very much a real-life Prometheus story of stealing fire from the gods to give to the people. Nobel was then overwhelmed by the heartache of the destruction used by his invention and reinvented himself with the Nobel Prize to give back to the world with a peace prize to assuage the death toll left by his creation. Helly attempts to escape again and is brought to the break room. The torture of the break room is interesting by Milkshake saying they don't mean it, after their statement is implying that their innies are not true or genuine to themselves, which is an entire torture in itself, being innies and unaware of their nature in relation to their outies. Petey stops breathing, Petey's cell phone rings. Helly remains in the break room. Also, I just put together that the break room is also there to break you. You know, like it's doing a thing. I love this moment of Helly in the elevator because it's the first time we see what the end of the day process is like for the innies, and it's just horrifying. Also, this map is so fantastic. Petey identified what he was making as cubism, but looking at Basquiat's crown, the mind suggesting the light bulb from Picasso's Guernica, abstracted arrows and circles similar to Kandinsky, and stylized colored boxes and white grid motif of Mondrian, I'm gonna suggest more of an abstract expressionistic piece. But I'm sure Bert or Audi Irving would know way more than me.
And now though we're all here, we're not all there.
Also, best Muppet musical. Yeah, I said it. Come at me, you Christmas Carol simps. Irving goes to find Bert. Helly gets out of the break room. The layout of O&D resembles that of a morgue, in my opinion. The O&D outfits are very clinical, as well as the shelves of drawers that pull out. I mean, that's kind of how historic art is preserved, but I still think the parallel works, of the Lumon propaganda machine being rebirthed and recreated through art for the retooled indoctrination within the company. Petey's map is destroyed. Ricken's book is discovered. Ricken calls him a cartographer of the mind in his note, which is interesting after destroying the map of discovery in their literal workplace. It is replaced by Ricken's book, which acts as a map of discovery inside the innies themselves. Helly takes drastic steps and is put in place by her Audi. Exit light, enter night, lyrics from the Enter Sandman at Petey's funeral. Cobell gets Petey's chip. Mark mourns the tree and presumably icy roads he should be keeping his eye on. Bert and Irving get another adorable scene of bonding with a perceived stigma around their relationship that they feel intrinsically pulled towards. Mark makes a tree, Irving makes a discovery, Helly makes a decision. Mark and Dylan continue to read through Ricken's book, and they see these banal platitudes as anti-establishment gospel of a revolution. Remember when this happened in Cloud Atlas? Did anybody see Cloud Atlas? I've seen Cloud Atlas, and I gotta tell you, it's not very good. And it's pretty offensive. And it's also stupid. But there's one story set in 2144 in Neo Soul where a cloned woman is introduced to a dull slapstick comedy film but interprets one line of zany dialogue as revolutionary doctrine that becomes a battle cry for an upheaval of an entire caste system. And it's this beautiful message about how the perceived message of a work of art is up to the discretion of the viewer, who will happily shape said art into the context they wish to see. And I think that is a fantastic message within art as a medium. And it's lovely to see that displayed here. But this show is good, and Cloud Atlas is not good at all. Yeah, I said it. Come at me, you Cloud Atlas simp. I also love the restraint the show displays with Ricken's book. It's terrible and glib, but it's presented visually as inspiring and provocative as the innies are taking it in. In the birthing cabin, Mark explains to Ricken that their child deserves their own name, not that of Mark's late wife, again harkening back to names being equated to identity. Mark shows Helly his kind eyes. Irving and Dilling show a bit more of their character by debating what help Helly means. Irving suggests hiding Kier quotes around the office, as Kier's doctrine is the most important thing to Innie Irving. Dylan suggests her earning more perks and rewards, since these are tokens that are most important to Innie Dylan. Miss Casey and Mark have color-coordinated outfits. Wonder why that is. I love how Irving's paint delusions can be seen both as pervading thoughts of Bert as well as foreshadowing of his Audi hobby. I honestly think with Milkshake taking initiative here and Cobell trying something new with Miss Casey is the first time we see that Lumon isn't this monolith we assumed it was. Milkshake, Cobell, Grainer are not all a hive mind, and these allegiances and betrayals are very much in play with the universe of the show. Mark is trying to recreate Petey's map. Bert and Irving's conversation gives a brutal display of how xenophobic programming can be used to keep people isolated and subservient. And we finally see what the kids are having for dinner. See what I did there? It's a goat thing. Okay, a little theory, and I'm not sure if I'm the only one here. With this lionized depiction of the courtship of Kier and Imogen on full display, both of them working at a factory together, and we are well aware how important mythos and reverence for historic events are in the Lumon doctrine. Is Helly or James or Lumon itself trying to recreate this motif with Helly and Mark's sudden romantic turn as a sort of boon towards Helly's ascension to the Egan throne? Now, this could just be a visual representation of Bert and Irving's workplace romance, but they just spent some time time on explaining this story that it seems like it's a little indication. We see the departments coming together, which feels like a win, but it seems this is part of Cobell's experiment, which leaves us unsure of her allegiances and motives. We see Cobell worshipping to a shrine of Kier, a touching moment of Irving and Bert. MDR and OD meet and Mark begins talks of a revolution, caught by Milkshake and sent to the break room, passing Miss Casey on her way out. Milkshake awakes Dylan's innie to his Audi world to retrieve information. Mark sees Petey's daughter's punk show, and the song is pretty Cloud Atlas, if you know what I mean.
I'm pretty sure we suck.
She said it, not me. Mark meets Ragabi and follows her. Ragabi kills Grainer and gives him an access card. Dylan begins questioning his devotion to Lumon after seeing his son in his Audi's home. Irving asks about soap labels in the bathroom, and I hate to keep bringing up this awful movie, but in Cloud Atlas they are turning those clones into soap as food for the other clones. It's a truly terrible movie, and it is dumb. The MDR get an MDE even though Helly's at 73. Dylan cracks and attacks Milkshake, and while Dylan's enchanted delirium's fully dismantled,
The music dance experience is officially canceled.
Dylan explains the ability for Lumon to wake them up outside of Severance with the overtime contingency. Mark shows MDR his newly acquired keycard. We see the security office that is impossible not to draw at least inspiration from the Pearl and various Dharma stations from Lost. Bert's retirement party is wonderful reveal of an Audi's better intentions for this whole procedure. The honor that displays after being called upon by his Audi, and tremendous performance of Totoro at the understanding what retirement truly means within the world of Severance. I do love that Milkshake suggests that this is Inner Bert's retirement song selection when the record is clearly labeled as Inner Retirement Song with no indication of selection options, giving Bert the illusion of choice in this heavily scripted retirement procedure. I mean, yeah, you get a choice of what side of the record, but you get what I mean. A drunken Mark puts together the pieces for us on who his late wife is. For a second time now, Mark attempts to rip up a truth he'd rather not address, much like Petey's map, to reassemble upon further reflection. The episode starts with the reason Irvin is so tired at work and what was under his fingernails. Helly gets to 100% on her data refinement file and gets a personalized electronic greeting from Kier himself, voiced by Ben Stiller. Also, Bert and Irving shouldn't have worried about Kier on that cliff. Dude can fly. Mark meets Miss Casey one last time. That actress is doing just a fantastic job in this role, I gotta say. She reads Mark the attributes of his Audi, but Mark has lost his innocence concerning Lumon. The tree is gone with only a few of its leaves scattered on the floor, and now he is eaten from the apple of good and evil, you know? Miss Casey is sent back down to the testing floor and asks for the same reassurance of her Audi's happiness that she was given to others who were severed, revealing the elevator in Irving's paintings. Can I just say I love the inclusion of the waffle party in connection to the phrase "what's for dinner" from Irving? As innies, you realize that lunch is probably the only meal they get to have, with breakfast and dinner being completely foreign ideas to them. Cobell is fired for withholding information as the MDR team prepares to be woken on the outside world inside of some bylighting. Should we be reading into this? A quick sum of inspiration from Ricken and they are off. Irving first, Helly steals a kiss, and they follow. As Mark leaves, we see the blue carpet Friends of Lumon event starting to be set up. This is where things get very interesting. I adore that part of the waffle party experience is also giving Dylan the experience of walking up to the Kier house. The lights are set to a darker color scheme as well to give the innie the approximation of coming home at night to your house. Again, an experience they would never know. Kier's bust looks on as Dylan is instructed to go to the founder's bed containing a mask representing Kier himself. So there is so much to unpack with this next section of the waffle party. We see Dylan don the mask, himself playing the part of Kier, walking home, eating, getting into bed just as an Audi would do. We see next to Dylan a cat o' nine tails whip with the 9 core principles on each tail, as we see a ritualistic seductive dance performed for Dylan of 4 dancers, each representing one of the 4 tempers of Kier. The innies understand what sex is, or at least allude that they do in passing conversation throughout the series. But again, this is an activity probably none of them have had. It seems that Kier understands the carnal needs of humanity in some way, and because of this chooses to present sex as an exalted recreation of Kier's tale. The act of sex has become part of company loyalty. The individualism of sex removed to be replaced with founder worship. Also, the cat o' nine tails heavily implies that I'm guessing Kier viewed sex simply as a form of domination and control. I'm not yucking anyone's yum, but forcing your kinks onto your employees as company policy just doesn't sit right with me. The jester's dance is willful, the maiden's submissive, the crone dominant. We don't really see the goat dance, but the dancer appears to be male presenting? Just saying. I think it's one of the most disturbing images that the show presents, that even in any sexuality is commodified and directed towards a Kier-centered worldview. Dylan leaves during the ritual to activate the overtime contingency to awaken the MDR innies in the outside world. The three MDR awaken. Mark awakens at Ricken's book reading. Being surrounded by acquaintances and not knowing who you can actually trust is also a great statement of modern social interactions. Irving awakens by himself in his apartment, discovers that he also loves the pets of Radar and his art collection. Helly awakens at the Lumon Gala to find out she is in fact Helena Egan, daughter of the current CEO and very much in the lion's den. Mark tracks down and assesses who his sister is. It's really this very touching moment where he asks her with an open heart if he is close with his sister. Irving immediately dismisses his mission to investigate his outie self and understand his past. It's fantastic seeing Ricken's book reading. It seems the outside world, if not just those in Ricken's immediate friend circle, also are beginning to praise and become astonished by Ricken's readings. Is this too how Kier Egan himself started off, with a small following of devoted followers to his word? At the end of the series, is Ricken going to become the new boss, same as the old boss? What did a bird do to her head? The reveal of Helly's severance as a publicity stunt is another brilliant scene. Helly has the double heartbreak of not only being a subjugate as a severed to her outie, but her entire ordeal was used as a publicity stunt packaged and presented in the mythical tales of the Egans before her, with all her true but controversial decisions used to express herself being wiped from the historical retellings. I also love Helly's severance stories presented in the Apple TV Plus show Severance font. This event itself is presented as a censored version of the show within itself. That's pretty great. Also, you notice during Helly's testimonial, they keep doing this weird zoom in and zoom outs all the time, which feels like a slight towards hip reality television show editing or zany mockumentary style of The Office. US Office, not British Office. Yeah, I said it. Come at me. But it feels like this fun little knock at this quick speed editing. I like it. Cobell boats the party to expose the innies. While Irving tracks down more of his past, he comes across the address of Bert, a good man. Oh, that's adorable. Also, Irving being reliant on maps of a series of mazes that he also has to navigate in the real world to get to Bert. Helly's papa giving off some big Teddy Perkins vibes, am I right? Also, if you haven't watched that one, gotta watch that. Dylan holds the door like all good door holders in theatrical series do. Cobell is exposed as Mrs. Solvig. Irving sees Bert's happy life. Milkcheck on Dylan with that knife. Helly exposes workplace strife. Mark turns out still has a wife. So obviously season finales can be tricky. In my opinion, you really got three approaches. With the wrap-up approach, you kind of take care of everything that happened in this season and leave us wondering what could happen in the next season. I think the best example of this being every season of The Wire. Season 1, the Avon storyline is concluded with his capture and Wee-Bey taking the fall while D'Angelo's place is cemented in the Barksdale Empire. Season 2, we don't talk about Season 2. I mean, Brother Mouzone, yes, but we don't talk about Season 2. Season 3, we see the rise and creation of Hamsterdam and Bunny left to process the events and the Hubertic defeat of Stringer Bell. Season 4, we see the conclusion of our four boys from the West. Naaman is taken in, Randy is left out, Michael is working his way up, Daquan is working his way down. Season 5 is a throwback to the chess game at the pit. We see all of our chess pieces move position. Carcetti becomes governor, Daquan becomes Bubbles, Michael becomes Omar, Marlowe stops playing, Omar stays king, and McNulty learns something about what it means to really help. It's obviously fantastic. By wrapping up each of these seasons the way they do, it leaves the viewer with this sense of conclusion as well as excitement within the building storyline of the show itself. With the flip approach at the end of the season shows us something that flips the world we know upside down that will change everything we knew for the coming season. It's not really a twist, more of like a, because of what happened here, next season the world is going to be very different. Want to know a great one of that? God help me, Game of Thrones Season 1. Presenting Dany as an enslaved wife growing to a powerful partner and ending with her rise to power and demands of justice, she's got dragons now. A character we assumed was going to be a bit player in the story of her brother or husband is now thrust into the leading role. And that changes her whole trajectory and the trajectory of the world. Same with the Stark family, now fractured and broken after the death of Ned. And yeah, like every season of Lost. Season 1, the Raff is rescued by the boat only to take Walt and expand exactly how powerful the others are and the intrigue within opening the hatch. Season 2, the Losties are taken by the others and Penelope discovers the island. Season 3, the arrival of the rescue team and the flash forward to go back. Season 4, moving the island and reveal of Deadlock. Season 5, question of the bomb and the death of Jacob. Season 6, we don't talk about Season 6. I mean, I talked a ton about Season 6. Into Lost? Wondering what else I'm obsessed over? Check out my previous videos on the OK Morale channel. You don't have to, it's a free country. At least it used to be. It still is, but it used to be too. So I call this the ellipses approach because the season finale doesn't really change anything or wrap anything up. You might wonder if I mean cliffhanger, but I would argue it's not really a cliffhanger if you are not left wondering any specific questions besides I wonder what's going to happen next. It's generic, it's overall. A good example of this, I'd say Breaking Bad Season 1. Season 1, Walt and Jesse are in league with Tuco to sell meth and Tuco is crazy, and the end of the season, that is still true. We sort of pause at the end to pick up there for Season 2. This approach isn't bad.
It wasn't bad. It wasn't bad.
We just don't get a big reveal or a wrap-up like in the other two approaches. That being said, in my opinion, I would argue Severance Season 1 is an ellipses approach. I mean, Ellie told everyone about the Innies experience, but with them being at the gala called Friends of Lumon, I don't see how this will really change things. Milkshake is going to punish Dylan, whether it be in the break room or the mysterious elevator. Mark's sister knows his wife is alive. I mean, okay, in a lot of ways, that ending just kind of felt like the end of another episode. Yes, I'm excited to see what's going to happen, but it didn't lend a finality in terms of wrapping things up, nor an upheaval in terms of flipping the world. So, Severance Season 1, yeah, it was great. I had a blast with these characters in this world. The first half of the season did so much amazing building in terms of character and mystery. I was really blown away. I would argue the second half sort of floated within the mysteries of the first half and rode them to the finale, but that's not a bad thing. I'm glad this show is building up some following because it really deserves it, and I think the creators are smart enough to know that they need to hit the ground running with Season 2 and start expanding out this world, and I'll be there first episode with bells on. And if you don't like my review, just be happy Tom Hanks didn't do Yellowface.
True.